This task, I was very tempted to dwell on the fact that a male chairperson for Al-Anon is introducing a male speaker for Al-Anon. But I realized that we were just two people seeking recovery from the effects of alcoholism on our lives by working on ourselves first. I had the privilege of hearing Ajit's tape about 2 years ago, and I thought at the time, what a beautiful distillation of the essence of Al-Anon. This made sense to me. I heard what he said, and I hope tonight you will listen and open your hearts to this wonderful speaker, Ajit S. from Irvine, California.
Thank you. Oh, it's very sweet. I feel like Mark Twain, who said, I'm embarrassed when people compliment me. I feel they aren't saying enough. That was very, very cute. This is beautiful. My name is Ajit. Got a Mensa crowd in here. They say higher the intelligence, the easier it is for them to pronounce a foreign name. And I have about 2,000 versions ranging from A-shit to horseshit. And the spelling is A-J-I-T. It's quite simple, you know. It's not the hululu, pululu, all the U's and I's. I was driving with Vicky and I see all these. I said multiple vowels and then you come across Henry. Before I start, I want to do, the stuff. But first of all, I'm Christine's warm-up act. She's going to follow me. I want to thank Cindy for being wise enough to enjoy my CD and hand it to Holly and Peter. And thank you for inviting us. It's been wonderful. Of course, Chuck and Karen, terrific hosts. I've been kidding Chuck, but he really has been a tremendous host. We had him blushing this evening. But my God, I've never seen anyone look so red. You matched the sunset. It was gorgeous. And I went to a restaurant called Bite Me. And that's a pretty cute name for a restaurant. And Walt and Susan, delightful hosts, had a great, great meal at their house last night. It was pretty cool. And then, of course, I understand Johnny and Linda have done the decorations, and Johnny told me he did the rocket going up. And it has to be Johnny to come up with an idea like that, being transported into the fourth dimension. If you ever come out to Orange County around Valentine's, Johnny and Linda put on a heck of a retreat for couples. You have to be a couple to show up. Whether you're straight, gay, transgendered, or whatever, just show up. It's pretty cool. This has been a very special occasion for me coming out here because on April 23rd, 2005, at the Getty Museum, while I was looking at a statue of Cupid, I fell in love with my honey, Vicky, and we're celebrating our 5th anniversary being together today. We had a couple of... And I was reading this book called Conversations with God, and he said, you discover yourself when you're in a relationship. And in the last 5 years, I've discovered that I'm a compassionate, kind, generous, loving, thoughtful... I'm teasing. I'm also quite modest. Actually, I'm so humble, I'm proud of it. No, I'm teasing. I want to greet all my Al-Anon friends in here. How many Al-Anons? Hello. Any alcoholics in this room? I greet you too. Why do we wag a finger at alcoholics? I have no idea. I think it was Mitch Hedberg, the comedian, who said, alcoholism is the only disease for which you are yelled at. And if you're an English major, forgive me for letting my preposition dangle. You don't yell at a cancer patient, I thought you were in remission, for God's sake. How could you? How could you do this to us? Any double winners in this room? You're a schizophrenic lot. You probably sit and nudge yourself in a room. Any children of alcoholics? Double this to you. and this is a true salute, because I've been an Al-Anon sponsor, and I say, I don't know how these kids make it into adulthood. You know, when you can see a 13-year-old kid tell you, and he's telling you like he's giving you, the baseball score for the day. He's talking about the game. So my father picked me up and threw me across the room against the window, and he's speaking so nonchalantly. And you hear another kid say, I got a bottle hidden just in case I need it, and he's 12. And I'm saying, how are these kids going to make it? So my salute to you. If you made it through and you're successful in your life today, whatever you do, having come through the travails of living in the disease of alcoholism, where you feel like you have no choice being a child. So thank you for being here. I'm very, very grateful that I was given the privilege of being an Al-Anon sponsor. So anyway, my story is pretty simple. I'll tell you how it was, what happened, and how it is today. It all started, I can tell you for a moment what my true disease is. It's called image management. And I'm a recovering cad and a prick. I can say that, can I? They told me I had 2.5 hours, but I only have an hour to share. I don't have much of a story. And that's funny. I tell you in the second one, I cannot recall exactly when I walked into Al-Anon. It was circa 1980, but I can tell to the moment when she walked into AA. May 25th, 1983, 8:02 p.m. Running a couple minutes late. At the corner of University and Culver, at the United Methodist Church. And I can't recall when I walked into Al-Anon, somewhere in the fall of 1980. Now, you can say that I've been in program, this year it'll be 30 years, but my recovery has not been a straight line. It's time in program does not necessarily mean recovery if I look at myself. My program actually took hold of me in 1997. And I suffer from the disease called arrogance. And arrogance is not necessarily just being a boaster or a show-off or what have you. It shows up in the form of enabling, in the form of caretaking. You're not wise enough, smart enough, good enough. I'm going to take care of you. Is there a bounce thing going on, or can you hear me okay? But anyway, the image management came from my childhood, where my mother's mantra at home was, what will they say? I had no idea who these they were, but they were obsessed with my behavior. And they were judging me not only by the person I was and what I wore and how I talked, but they also judged me by the company I kept. So that's, you walk around and I realized when I came into program that virtually no depth to my personality, and I was pretty unidimensional because my entire focus was on the outside. What will they say? So there's no introspective work going on growing up. No one's talking to you about how do you feel. I didn't know the meaning of the word feelings, and I didn't think men experienced feelings. I tended to intellectualize my own feelings, and in my case, pseudo-intellectualize them. In fact, I was at my men's stag meeting in Garden Grove, and the guys were talking about feelings. And I said, God, what's a bloody feeling? These guys are talking about feelings. So I'm driving home, sipping on a can of soda, and I start to feel a welling in my chest here. And I said, oh God, I'm experiencing a feeling, but I'm not happy, and I'm not sad. What is it? And carbon dioxide escapes me, and the feeling is gone. So this is how disconnected I was with my own insides. So it's incapable of having an intimate, transparent, vulnerable relationship with anyone else. So I think I was mildly sociopathic perhaps growing up, and I didn't know that till I started to discover my behavior in Al-Anon. Knew nothing about the disease of alcoholism despite the fact that we lost an uncle to this disease in India. He died of the cirrhosis of the liver, blind in both eyes. And remember his wife dropping him off almost a stopped car outside another uncle's home. And I thought she was practicing the art of detachment. But she was actually distancing herself from him, out of sight, out of mind. Yes, the name is Indian, Ajit. It means one who cannot be beaten. Even you laugh. And yes, I do not own a gas station, and I don't own motels. I don't have an out-call service someplace in India. I'm not a doctor, I'm not an engineer, and I don't write software. But I do wear my golf shoes with the spikes on the inside. No, I'm telling you. Actually, the way I played today might as well. And I found out that my headmaster in school, we call them headmasters, you call them vice principals here, had actually started the first chapter of Alcoholics Anonymous in Bombay, India. And I asked a friend of mine, I said, what's Alcoholics Anonymous? And they said, they get drunks off the street and get them sober. Little did I know that AA would at least figuratively come to my now former spouse's rescue and get us sober. So if she has stayed sober, and if my memory serves me right, on May 25th, 2010, she'll have 27 years. How cool. And I was told, don't call her your ex. Refer to her as your former spouse. For abbreviation purposes, I shall refer to her as FS. F stands for former. There's no epithets intended here. Oh, God. It's a long journey, I tell you. And both A and Al-Anon have been good to us. Our divorce was fairly non-acrimonious. We did not go to court, and I'll tell you that in the story. And we co-parented 4 children, twins and 2. My eldest will be 25 in June. Justin is showing some signs. We're not sure. He's had 2 DUIs before the age of 23. He claims he's not alcoholic, and he had to go to alcoholism classes. And he said, how do I introduce myself? I said, introduce yourself as Justin, a member of DAM. He says, what's DAM? I said, Drunks Against Mad Mothers. And he didn't like that too much. He wasn't too thrilled about that. But he's one of the sweetest young men you'll ever meet, very intelligent, but not very driven. He's more philosophical and bent and not very materialistically oriented. His sister is the exact opposite. She claims she's had 1 blackout drunk, but she's not alcoholic, so we'll find out. And I told them both, I said, your mom's going where she needs to go. I'm going where I need to go. If you are, you'll discover and you'll find your way there. And then, of course, Corey, who is completely a normie in my case, in my family, and he is studying to be an animation artist. So when you see videos and 3D movies and stuff, you might see his handiwork down the road, hopefully. And the little boy, Nathan, he's moved to New York, and he is what I call a metrosexual. A metrosexual is a straight man who appears to be homosexual. Because it's just... And I love my kids. We have a phenomenal life together, a very loving relationship. And I'm also fond of Vicky's kids. Her daughter's also going to New York, and a son, a delightful, bright young man, and he reminds me of my son Justin. In fact, the 2 of them headed off, so we'll see where their paths take them. Anyway, so I grew up in Bombay, India, and I decided that I was going to seek serenity. So I finished up at college, put on my best Sunday loincloth, and walked up the mountain. No, I never went. That's a bad visual. And I walked up to my guru. I said, oh, great one, I seek serenity. And he said, go to Detroit, Michigan, and join Al-Anon. I just say that for effect. The bastard neglected to tell me I had to marry an alcoholic in the process. So I leave Bombay, and I'm flying out, and I'm warned by well-meaning friends and family. This is back in 1974. And they said, do not get involved with American women. And I said, why? They said, because they drink and smoke in the open like men do. Translation, Indian women are discreet. They do it behind closed doors. Now, I did not care about the fact that the American woman smoked, kissing an ashtray, so what? But I loved the fact that she drank. Because they say candies, dandy, liquors quicker. It made my progress in an evening extremely cost-effective and expedient. I was like that Alan Alda character in that movie, My Kind of Woman, drunk. Little did I know. I went to work, I finished up at school, and I went to work, a company called Xerox, you might have heard of it, the copier people. And we used to hang out at a bar called Yesterdays, looking for our soulmate du jour. What a waste of time, money, and energy. Who was the Englishman who said sex? The price is exorbitant, the position is ridiculous, and the pleasure is transitory. In my case, the price was truly exorbitant, a lot of cash going out. And I used to hang out at this place with my buddies from Xerox and lure the women to go on an adventure with me. And the adventure was going to downtown Detroit. If you've never been to Detroit, you know what I'm talking about. But we went to a safe enclave in the midst of downtown. It's called Greek Town. Now you know why I ended up with a Greek woman. From Greece through Arkansas. She has a great accent. You should talk to her sometime. I tell her Arkansas is the only state where a toothbrush means just that. Toothbrush, not tooth. If you're from Arkansas, that's terrible. I'm just teasing. If you're from Arkansas, I hope you have a sense of humor. I take a lot of ribbing being an Indian. I'm driving with friends and there were cows in the pasture and the guy screamed, "Stop." I said, "Why?" He said, "Ajit's got to go to church." You know what's neat about this deal here with you guys is this joint thing about AA and Al-Anon. You get a lot of ribbing on both sides. I hear Al-Anons have this smug attitude about alcohol. Oh, he's just an alcoholic. And I said, do you realize that your behavior is no different from that of an alcoholic in most cases? One drinks, the other one obsesses over behavior. It's the same old stuff. And there's a woman named Polly Pistol, if you have never heard her talk. She said, if you strip away the alcoholic, you got a flaming Al-Anon. I have jokes. How many Al-Anons does it take to screw in a light bulb? None. They let it screw itself now. And the AAs have a joke. Why does an Al-Anon close her eyes when she's making love? Because she can't bear to see her husband have fun. So it's good to see that you guys have this real joint effort here, and it's marvelous. So anyway, why reason I go to Greek town? Because I'm also cheap, and I use a $5 word, parsimonious. That sounds a little more elegant than cheap. And we go to Greek town, and Greek town had this wonderful, this is back in 1970s, before you were born, Christine, 1974, 75, somewhere around there. And we could get a 4-course meal for $25 that included this wonderful elixir called Roditus wine. And Roditus wine had this phenomenal quality of transforming an absolute stranger into the most wonderful of friends over the course of a meal. And I loved it. And one day when I was talking to my wife, I said, I had all these relationships, and I'm really insulting the word relationships because, lasted maybe a day or two, a week, 2 weeks. And I said, I never married any of them because we Al-Anons carry a beam. Alcoholic, no, don't waste your time. Alcoholic, no, don't, move on. And I married you because our beams took off. She said, nonsense, if you'd married one of them, you would have driven them to drink too, like you did me. So you can't win. Amazing. It was just, you look back and you realize how much time was wasted doing all that nasty crap, trying to look good. For people who didn't know you from Adam, the image you carried, you wanted to show off to people who didn't give a damn whether you existed, but you thought you were so important because there were people checking you out or monitoring your movements or how you walk, talk. There's so much way you can, instead of taking a look inside. So I don't like to give advice on the stage because, God, we all have our own paths to walk. But if you are where I was then, stop. Because it's a waste of time. It really is. And what a gift this program has been. I have a fellow in my men's group. He says, I'm grateful for the alcoholic in my life. And initially I want to choke the life out of him. But today I know what it means. Because if it hadn't been for the disease of alcoholism, I would not have found myself to begin with. And the love I have in my life today in this wonderful program. Because it took that to get me here. So I really applaud the AAs and, of course, my brothers and sisters in Al-Anon because this program has meant a lot to me. Anyway, I decided that I needed to find serenity. So and this is the story of a former CAD. I'm not that CAD anymore. It's dormant someplace. And in steps 6 and 7, we say God removes all our defects of character. In my case, God has not removed all my defects of character. He makes them dormant and asks me to focus on the not-so-defects of character, the assets, if you will. So the CAD person is dormant. But what I'm about to tell you may cause some of the women to get a little upset at me. But that's the old Ajit, the dormant Ajit. I was invited to my boss's home for a party, and I was seeing a woman that did not fit the image I wanted to project at this party. So God has a sense of humor. I went out looking for the right image. And the right image showed up at a place called Traffic Jam, which was a student hangout at Wayne State in Detroit. And I was a part-time lecturer, so I was taking some of my students, and this woman comes and waits at our table. She's working her way through nursing school at this place, and my beam took off, and I said, here's the alcoholic in my life. I'll make her excuses, tell her lies, mend her damaged relationships. And her beam took off and said, here's the idiot who's going to do it all. And I asked her out. I said, would you go out with me? And she said, sure. And believe me, you're the first patron in this place I'm ever going out with. So I got my head blown up, my chest puffed out, and I asked this woman out to go with me to this party, but we go out to dinner first. Now, normally when I went out to dinner with a woman, I listened with an open mind, in one ear, out the other, because I have to strategize. And men know what I'm talking about. You go, and it's buzzing by because I'm strategizing. But in this case, I was actually indulging in intellectual intercourse with this woman. She was talking, and I was listening, and I was responding. And that was very scary. I should have left at the restaurant and gone away, but I was seeking serenity. So we went to this party, and warning number 2 shows up. George, he said, you and your lady look so comfortable together. How long have you been going out? 7, 8, 9 years? I said, George, I met this woman last week. This is our first date. But then the Indian in me came out, oh, maybe it's, a past life experience sort of thing. And this is the only time I'll give advice. If you're that comfortable with someone on your first date, one of you leave. Because they say the holes in your head fit the rocks in theirs and whatever they say. But I was seeking serenity. So I started to have a relationship with this woman. And we're dating for a while. And one evening at about 10 o'clock at night, there's a knock on the door. And I open, and out she stands with a lump on her head. And I said, what happened? And she said, my mother struck me in an alcoholic rage. Now the father in me, the knight in shining armor, the dad, personalities that Sybil would have envied came gushing forth. And I said, you will not move in with that woman. You will move in with me. Now a Hindu from Bombay, India does not ask a Polish Catholic girl to move in with him. But that's not the scary part. The scary part was watching a very God-fearing Catholic mother who disavowed sinful relationships like living together, actually helping her daughter move in with me. To watch those 2 women carrying their furniture up was a pretty awesome sight. I should have left them both at my apartment and driven away, but I was going to find serenity in Al-Anon. It was around the corner. We had blissful living together for a few minutes. And then came the banging of the doors and the strange sounds emanating from the bedroom, and I'm not even there. Tires squealing and all that stuff is going on. We're getting a rip-roaring royal spats. So we did the next indicated thing. We got married, of course. If this is not right, then we'll fix it by getting married. And we got married and moved into this little quaint condo in a town called Warren, Michigan. If you're from Warren, be grateful you're on the Big Island. And this little condo, now you might say, hey, all this is going on, you must have been in denial. Denial for me at that time was progress. I was clueless. I was absolutely clueless because, as I said, I had no connection with the outside world because I had no connection with myself. I had no clue what was going on. It didn't matter to me as long as my tea was served to me in the morning with a glass of orange juice and a newspaper. I didn't care what happened. And I had no idea. It just embarrassed me when she raised her voice too high. The way I got angry was, Susan, I am really angry. And she'd say, who the heck are you? Prince Charles, you stuffed shirt? And she'd scream even louder. And I'm trying to shut the doors because I don't want the neighbors to find out. So anyway, when I get to this little condo, we had this little half bathroom that I later discovered was her bar. This is how clueless I am. I'd go in this half bathroom, I'd open up the cabinet to the little thing down there under the mirror, under the sink, and 6 or 7 empty cans of beer would pop out. And I would be upset, and I'd go up to her and say, why don't you throw the empty cans in a trash can? And she said, oh, Aunt Bunny came and had some beers. It never occurred to me to call up Aunt Bunny and say, why do you take a 6-pack into the bathroom? Are you eliminating the middleman? I don't know. This one really puzzled me, and it is a good alcoholic in good standing. Maybe you can tell me. I had a buddy show up, and I said, Tom, would you like a glass of wine? He said, sure. I reached into the cabinet. Oh, thank you. They had water here already. Oh, thanks. I said, would you like a glass of wine? He said, sure. And I reached in the cabinet, pull out this bottle of wine. It's got the cork, it's got the silver wrapping, it's got the red thing, but the bloody thing is empty. Are there special stores for alcoholics where they sell long syringes to pull the booze out to mess with the Al-Anon's mind, or pre-Al-Anon? I'm like an idiot, I'm shaking this bottle and it evaporated, I don't know. It wasn't until my family had moved into the Michigan area and I was going to introduce them to the white sheep of the family. Get in the car and we start to drive just leaving the house. We get into the spat and I smell a lot of banaka on her. Mangatuash. And I said, you know what, I can't take you in this mood. You're going back home. I'm going to go see them myself. So turn around, and she jumps out of the car and she marches into the house. And for some reason, I follow her and she rushes into the half bathroom. And I stand there and she sees me coming. She's trying to shut the door to that cabinet. And inside what I saw was a 55-gallon drum of Gallo wine. It was a gallon jug, but I imagined it this much. And it's like time stood still. And a little voice in my head said, your wife's an alcoholic, your wife's an alcoholic, your wife's an alcoholic, your wife's an alcoholic. And if God had appeared in some anthropomorphic form and said, we need only one of you, because you're going to think her thoughts, feel her feelings, experience her emotions. You're going to talk to her, she's going to respond, but she doesn't have to be there. I said, God, you're crazy. It's not going to happen to me. But that's exactly what happened. A friend of mine put it beautifully. He said, if you know how I feel, stick a thermometer of my wife's, you know what. And you'll know how I feel. She was happy, I was happy. She was angry, I was confused. I learned how to ballet, walking on eggshells. So I wouldn't disturb, because if I disturbed, then things would go nuts. And at that moment, I'm looking at this bottle, I'm looking at her, and I get that next voice in my head, which I think is most of men have it, and we call it logic. But you women know it's not logic. You kind of fool us into thinking it's logical. I said, I'll take care of it. And how am I taking care of it? I'd been watching this commercial on TV by Schick Shadle. Does anyone remember those Schick Shadle commercials? Where the wife goes up to the husband and says, darling, you have a drinking problem. And he says, sweetheart, you're so right. I think an alcoholic wrote that. So I'm new to this country. I believe in the Truth in Advertising Act. I walk up to my wife and said, darling, you have a drinking problem. She said, you're an idiot. I don't. I have no plan B. Now, any new Al-Anons in this room? Living with an active alcoholic. Not with an active. Aye, good for you. Mine was rather sedentary. She wasn't active. She sat on the couch and threw bottles at me. That was about the activity we had. But anyway, I said, if I catch her in the act, then I'll know she knows that I know that she has a drinking problem. So if you're fairly new to Al-Anon, you're living with active alcoholism, you have a lot of time on your hands and not much of a life, you might want to do some of these things I did, but I certainly do not encourage you to. I would sit on the couch, staring at a blank television set, but I was trying to be totally unobtrusive by pretending to do the crossword puzzle. Because the TV is blank, I'm not going to sit and stare at a blank TV, she might find out. The reason I'm staring at a blank television set, because it's giving me a reflection of what's going on in the kitchen. You see, I'm smart. I'm so smart, I'm stupid. I see her pour her booze, and I make this Archimedean exclamation, aha! Like I've discovered a new law in physics or something. But I'm not doing anything yet, because she has to march up to the bedroom, and I'm going to get up and move the booze around. Then she'll get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, which is feed time, and then she'll look for those bottles, and she won't find them where she left them, and I know that she has a drinking problem. I didn't realize till a long time later when I heard some AA speak, and they said, oh, they had their booze in 19,000 places. Actually, I think I was more creative in the places I thought she had hidden. I was almost arrested for molesting my vacuum cleaner. It's just pawing Hoover, looking for the booze inside. Today, Hoover and I... No, I'm teasing. Oh, God. I did the sniff and kiss. Have you ever done that? Hi, sweetheart, how are you? As she were a cartoon, she'll become a flat thing, and I'm buzzed. Hiding bottles, kicking each other out, screaming, yelling, didn't know what was going on. Finally, I said, you have a drinking problem. She said, no, we have a marriage problem. I'm Polish Catholic and you're not. It's a phenomenal observation. I would never have guessed that was a problem. So I called a marriage counselor. I said, listen, I'm going to bring this person in ostensibly to discuss marriage, but I tell you, she's a drunk. You shackle her to some bedpost and pour methadone or whatever you do down a gullet and get her sober. He knew he was talking to a moron. And I had him well trained for 30 minutes. So I show up and he says, so, what's the problem? And I wanted to punch him in the face. Told you for 30 minutes. And I say, my wife drinks too much. She's crying. He's making notes. To make a long story short, he lets her go. So she says, I'll find a marriage counselor. So she finds one. We go see marriage counselor 2. And he sits, he's gone to school with the first guy. He says, so, what's the problem? I said, my wife drinks too much. He said, so, what's the problem? So I thought he had a problem with my accent. So I spoke louder and slower, like he's deaf and stupid. And so he says, so, what's the problem? And I got the inflection saying, so, what's the problem with that? And I swear to you, if you shut the lights off in the room, his nose gleamed so red, he could have served as a beacon on a dark ocean, guiding the ships around here. And I looked at my wife and said, oh my God, he's one of you. And she said, he understands. I says, of course he does. He disappeared three visits later. And then finally I said, this is insane. I'm going to leave. We're not, married, just short marriage, no kids, no assets. So I packed my bags and like Porky Pig, I'm walking out hibbity-hibbity with my stuff. And she comes up to me and she said, if you leave, I will commit suicide. Now, I'm not God Almighty, if you've had that in your family and how painful it is, but I was in such an angry place. I said, that I want to watch so you don't botch it up. So I followed her from the door to the kitchen area. Wrong thing, because her intentions changed from suicide to homicide. And I'm about as far as that gentleman in the black hat, and she's right here, and she's throwing knives and dishes at me with alarming accuracy. At 95 miles an hour, she could have tied up the Texas Rangers and made us both rather wealthy. And I'm dodging these missiles coming at me because I don't want to run out, because image management says, what if your neighbors find out that you got a drunk at home? Which brings me to the point in my talk, why do alcoholics get anonymous after they get sober? If you became so anonymous before you got sober, no problem. God Almighty. And then it occurred to me, I couldn't leave because she had fatal attraction. So I was going to kill her. I was reading this English magazine called Argosy. You think alcoholics are crazy? They're not. They have a stopping problem, right? Our thinking doesn't stop. I've heard alcoholics stand up and say, oh, because of the big book of alcoholics, my sponsor and my God, I haven't had the need to take a drink since 19 whatever. Al-Anons cannot get up and say, thanks to my sponsor, the big book of Al-Anon, and my God, I have not had an obsessive thought and I've been detached for the last... We don't have that ability. But you see an alcoholic and an Al-Anon, they're together, the husband and wife or whatever, and the husband has a slip and everything is, oh my God, he had a slip or she had a slip, and it's just riotous. But we don't recognize that we're slipping at the same time when we're so obsessed with the other person's behavior. Friends who go through that, and I've done that, my God, it's like the entire thing is they and not me, because it's also me. I'm the kind of guy, I have a very obsessive personality. I want to drive 4 cars on the freeway. The guy in front of me not going fast enough, the guy behind me wants to ride in my back seat, and the blind spot not letting me cut the guy in front. I can go out, this is, the old Ajit, going out on a date with a woman. She could be drop dead, number 11 on a scale of 1 to 10. God forgive her if she's got a piece of lettuce stuck in a tooth. That thing becomes a head of lettuce because she disappears. So to me, alcoholism has never been a problem. I've thought it was my problem, but it's never been my problem. People say, is alcoholism a disease? I said, I don't know and I don't care. Because my problem is not understanding the disease. That was my biggest problem with Al-Anon. So it's like disease like cancer or diabetes. My God, you don't tell that to a pseudo-intellectual like me that it's a disease like cancer or diabetes, because my brain then forms committees that debate. One side says disease like cancer, and the other one says, well, if it's cancer, why not chemotherapy? It's diabetes, why not insulin therapy? And then I come across the big book of A, which says it transcends all those concepts of disease and enters into realms that are spiritual and psychological and whatever else, that giant minds like, Young and Silkwood couldn't put their arms around. So who's this petty little mind sitting, figure out it's a disease? Because here I am trying to commit this, kill this woman. I'm actually reading this English magazine called Argosy that describes the perfect murder weapon. And don't get too excited, because you'll never find it in Hawaii. You will find it in Michigan. It's called an icicle. You know what I'm talking about. You've thought about it too. I come from the land of Gandhi. You're supposed to starve yourself to death to make the other person leave, not kill them. So I'm saying, I'm going to stab her with this thing, and I'm going to bury her in the basement. I know nothing about masonry. Who cares? And then a second thought occurs. What if a mother finds dust on a car? She'll know I've done something, and she'll call the police. And kid, you didn't come all the way from Bombay, India, to befriend some guy named Bubba in a Michigan prison. Being traded for cigarettes was not an option. So finally, the twins came to my rescue. I'm talking about dear Abby and Ann Landers. I'm a man of the whatever. I have such a well-developed feminine side. Before I met Vicky, I would date myself. Take myself dining and dancing. I'm teasing. That's sick. Oh, Lord. And the article by dear Ann Landers said, if you're mother of child or whatever of an alcoholic, go to Al-Anon. I said, finally, someone's going to show me how to get this woman sober. So I walked into my first Al-Anon meeting, and this is all about perspective, right? Or perception, I should say. The room was brightly lit like this. People about my age now. I was much younger then. But there were 6 women, average age, deceased. So that's my perception. 6 dead women. Almost like, God rest your souls in peace. I was so arrogant, so angry, I tell you. I went to the deadest of them all because she looked rather powerful. And I said, what's this all about? And she said, I want you to go to the end of the room. There's a table there, and on the table is some literature. And the literature table has a pamphlet called the 12 Steps. That's how it works. I said, this is easy, 12 steps, I can do that right now. So I walk up and I pick up the pamphlet. First step, admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. I said, I'm certainly not powerless over alcohol. I can stop when I want to. And my life would be far better if she would stop drinking. But see, I thought it was an escape clause at the top. It says, these 12 steps have been taken from Alcoholics Anonymous. We changed one word at the 12th step, we changed it to others. So look at the second step, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. I said, I'm the sane one, she's the insane one. Sane people do not contemplate homicide or promote suicide. They do not sniff and kiss. They do not see their wife on the floor with stuff coming out of her mouth. She's passed out. They don't have the desire to go to the trash can and start to look at the booze and critique their choice of alcohol. Kmart champagne, how gauche. Red wine, she didn't even have the cork to breathe. I mean, I'm a snob. I'm condemning her for a choice of alcohol while she's passed out. So I go up to my sponsor one time. I said, I was a garbologist. He says, what do you mean? I said, I was going through trash cans. And sponsors come from a school of one-upmanship. He said, that's nothing. I said, now I got to hear this. He said, when I was in the military, I worked at night on jeeps, and I took a flashlight in my mouth so I could use my hands. And he said, that trait came in handy because I could have a flashlight in my mouth and I could go through 2 garbage cans in the middle of the night. And I looked at him with such incredulity. I said, you know what? Why not go to Granger Industrial Supply and buy a miner's helmet? Don't tax your mouth. Go through 2 garbage. So Al-Anon's, be good to yourself. Get a helmet with a light. Step 3, made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God. I said, wait a minute. I went to Catholic school, 12 years. I said, God helps those who help themselves. Why give back to God that which He's given to me? That would make God an Indian giver, so I can say that. I took a fearless and personal moral inventory of myself. I was perfect. No defects of character. 5 goes against the grain of image management. If something were wrong with me when there was nothing, I wasn't going to tell you about it. Are you nuts? I glossed over 6 and 7, which are the underpinnings of my program today, because 7 had a word in it called humble. Actually, I was so humble, as I said, I was proud of it, and I glossed over it, went on to step 8. Made a list of persons I had harmed, they deserved it. 9, when is she going to make amends to me? And within about 3.5 minutes, I was spiritually awakened. And I looked at the woman and I said, now what? And she said, keep coming back. I said, why? She said, because you're sick. And she must have been a psychic because she said it with such emphasis. So I did. I went back every 6 weeks. You're embarking upon a program that gets into the core of your psyche, and there's a little button, screw in there that it twists just enough to change your perspective in life, to realize that you're not a victim, that you create your reality by the way you respond to situations and circumstances, by the thoughts you think and the energies you attract into your life, that you truly are responsible for your own attitudes, your own feelings, your own thoughts. No one else has that responsibility. And I read the article you asked me to read, that I'm responsible for my own self, my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions, everything, my actions. And yet I'm standing there blaming this other person, the sick person, and I'm the sicker one because I'm counting on this person to make me feel right. And it wasn't happening. And I'm going to go learn how to do this by going to class once a year, or once every 6 weeks. And then they confounded me when they compared this disease to diabetes and cancer and all that sort of good stuff. It wasn't until I got to Chicago from Detroit, I was transferred. I went to my first meeting in Schaumburg, Illinois. My spouse then had been to a treatment center, and I was all jacked up and I was cloud 9, see, I finally got someone sober. But a month later when she got out, she went back to drinking even harder than she had. I heard an A speaker put it beautifully. He said, if alcohol was like the Pacific Ocean, he was afraid it was going to evaporate. And that's how she drank. And I went from cloud 9 to sub-zero. And I realized how enmeshed and intertwined I was with this woman. I walked to my meeting in Schaumburg, and I said, tell me about this disease. I don't understand it. And I'm not suggesting you do this in your Al-Anon meetings here. I was chastised for even bringing it up. But they pointed me to the literature table, and on the literature table was the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous in an Al-Anon meeting. And they said, if you want to understand the disease, go to the source and read the first 163 pages. And that's when I recognized, A, I knew nothing about this disease, and I don't think anyone else does. It simply is. And there's a great saying in Al-Anon literature, it says, things are the way they are whether you understand them, and things are the way they are whether you don't understand them. And all I had to understand was that I was powerless over this thing. A speaker who died, I think his name is Hugh, he said, alcoholism is like making love to a gorilla. You ain't done with it till the gorilla's done with it. And I was trying to pry this 3-ton creature off this woman's back, and it wasn't working. And I was destroying myself in the process, trying to get her sober when I really had no power to do that. And 2, I had no right to do it. Vicki and I went to listen to this guy. He's a Lutheran who's converted to Buddhism, and he, quote-unquote, is a realized master. And he says something so profound that tied into detachment. He said he counsels a lot of alcoholics and drug addicts. And he says most of them, if not quite a few of them, in their darkest of moments have found their higher power. And he said, what right do I have to interrupt Spirit's progress into rejoining itself? And I said, what right did I have to interrupt the process, to point that finger, condemn? See, my weapon was sarcasm, because I came up in a family where you never struck a woman, even when she struck you. You avoided and you deflected, but you did not strike back. I think I hit my wife once defensively, and I felt awful about it. But I used this. I destroyed her spirit with my tongue, because I had the command of the language, and I would use words. Sarcasm, I later realized, from the one day at a time, comes from the Greek sarkazo, which means to tear flesh. And I was indulging in cannibalism of the worst kind. And when I realized what I had been doing, my living amends have been not to be very sarcastic, except with my host, Chuck. That's it. But I do it in jest. Today it comes from a place of love, not from a place of violent, virulent anger that's deep inside, that I'm better off having committed homicide than destroying spirit bit by bit by bit, just beating away. This program has taken a long time for me. It's been like the ocean that I see crashing against the waves. It's a very slow process of erosion. Because, see, my problem was when I started to work the steps, I thought I was working the steps. I was not working the steps. I was intellectualizing and philosophizing, in my case, mostly pseudo. Because if I read the step, I understood it. If I understood it, I could talk about it. And because I could verbalize it and be rather, pardon the expression, be eloquent about it, people actually thought I was working the program. And then I did something quite amazing. I mean, we're done with Schaumburg. I'm done all there. Now reading the steps, and they had step studies, so we're going into more philosophical discussions. And I moved to California. And this is where Susan found her sobriety, and I started to get deeper into Al-Anon. But I went into service, and I'm not suggesting going into service is wrong. It's extremely important. But I did it at the expense of not having to look at myself, because I became that little boy, what a good boy I am. I'm a GR, I'm a DR, I'm an IR, I'm a whatever R, and I'm, group secretary, treasurer. I'm speaking at meetings, speaking conferences. God, what a great program I'm working. But I haven't done a deep, dark fourth step. I haven't gone into the darkness and the maze to look at who this person is, because I'm surrounded by this adulation, all this wonderful stuff. I'm sponsoring people, poor guys. I owe them amends, the people I sponsored in my earlier years. And so I'm thinking I'm working a great program because I've read the steps, I understand them, I can talk about them, and I can intellectualize about them, and I can tell you why Bill W. should have changed the word understand, because no one understands God for God's sake. Any person who stands there and says, I understand God, is lying, because God is too big. So I'm trying to argue with this dead man who's written this beautiful book and these beautiful steps. And then came a whole series of circumstances where God had to take a 2x4 and hit me across the face in a very loving, gentle way. About 8 years into her sobriety, and 3 kids later, Nathan hadn't been born yet, my spouse remembered stuff from her past. It was very, very painful. Stuff that had happened to her as a child from people she trusted, and it altered the course of our marriage. And for 7 years, our marriage lost all physical intimacy, and we had some kind of other intimacy. I don't even know what it was, because there was a lot going on at the time. And 2 years before it ended, we were sleeping in separate bedrooms. By this time, Nathan had come about. So 4 kids, a lot of rancor in the home, a lot of pain, a lot of whatever was going on. And finally, she had the guts to say one time, this marriage is over. And man, oh man, I channeled a 75-year-old Jewish man. I said, oh my God, I put up with you for 17 years, and I'm going nuts. Then O.J. Simpson showed up, and I'm got the cleaver out, and I'm banging the kitchen drawer and throwing her books around. And it was very painful. We actually went and saw a divorce therapist. You only see those in California, I guess. And I tell you, all the stuff that had been bottled inside came up like that Icelandic volcano, because I had denied my feelings. When I would get angry, I would be angry for being angry. I'm in program for X number of years. I can't be experiencing anger. I can't be experiencing envy or insecurity. Everything is shoved inside. So I'm hacking at the leaves instead of getting to the root of what's going on inside. So all this just came up. I moved out. And I was going to sue the heck out of this woman. I'm sitting across this guy, paying him $250 an hour, telling him to show the world she's psychotic, neurotic, incapable of raising family, not even living in that home, throw her out in the streets. And God bless my late sponsor, he showed up on my shoulder. I don't know how he showed up, but I heard his voice very clearly. He always asked me, he said, remember, step 1 is to identify the problem. What's the problem? I heard in Chuck C.'s book that Johnny talks about at his retreat, he tells a story about a guy who was bitten by a dog, and he is very scared of dogs. And someone asked him, why are you scared of a dog? He says, he bit me. He says, why did he bite you? He says, he bit me because I was chasing someone. So who are you chasing? He says, chasing a girl. He says, I realized the problem has been women, not dogs. And so really, alcoholism is not my problem. My problem is obsession behavior. My problem is not having the ability to identify what really is the issue because I'm so outwardly focused. So this voice is telling me, what's the problem? I said, I don't want to lose my kids. See, I used to be a soccer referee, and I used to watch kids from divorced families with mama with a new boyfriend sitting on this side, dad with his new lady on here, and the kid has this lost look and he's torn between two shores. And I didn't want to see that look in my kid's face. And my sponsor said, how do you know you're going to lose your kids? I said, I know all women who want divorce want the kids so they can get all the child support. I've already made up my mind. I don't know the facts, but I know what the result is, right? So he said, why don't you call her and ask her? So I step out of the place, I call her up, and I said, I'm not going to take you to court on one condition. She said, what? I said, I don't want to lose the kids. She said, you're an idiot. We have 4 kids. I don't want them to myself. Every crisis has turned out to be a blessing. I found out that I was a better father divorced than I was married. I took 4 kids in tow the first school year for shopping 9 different stores, and I loved it. I still remember that day. I became much closer parent to my daughter, much closer. My daughter was trying to fix me up with her friends' mothers. Amazing. I'm not suggesting there's no pain. I didn't come from a divorced family. I'm sure there's a lot of pain, but we mitigated that, I think, by not going to court, not getting into battles, not getting into custody issues. We called it co-parenting, and I'm very, very grateful for that. Anyway, my therapist warned me. She said, do not get involved with women. Universal. She didn't talk about American women. I said, I don't want to be involved with women. I'm going to move to the island of Lesbos so I can be around women, but not involved with them. And she laughed. She said, no. Just stay away from relationships for a year. So I said, oh, no worries. I'm not going to get involved for a year. But then the rational mind took over. Your marriage has been dying for 7 years. 2 years you're sleeping in separate bedrooms. You have transitioned. You are now ready for takeoff. And the woman sitting in my meeting, flirting with me, and I asked her out, and she said yes. And, I came from a desert into an oasis at that time in terms of my perception, and everything was fantastic for the first 6 months. I should say actually 4. And then it started to go downhill. And a year later, it ended the way the therapist had said it would. She said, you'll be hit across the face with a 2x4. And I was in so much pain, I walked up to my sponsor. I said, do you have a gun? He said, why? I said, shoot me. I'm in pain. Instead, he said, when was the last time you were alone? I said, never. He said, why don't you lock yourself up for a couple of days and do your 4th? I said, you know what? I'm tired of this blueprint for progress and all that other stuff. What do you recommend? He said, for you, we're going to suggest you use the Courage to Change book. And on page 345 are 4 questions you need to answer. The first one is, who am I? The second one is, what are your values? 3, what do you wish to keep about you? And 4, what do you wish to get rid of? It was Thanksgiving on 1997. I locked myself up for 2 days, and I started to write on who am I. I had no clue. I was like Zelig, the Woody Allen movie. I was a doctor with doctors. I was a musician with musicians. I could gab my way around because I didn't know who the bloody hell I was. I refused my cultural heritage. I refused my national identity. I refused everything about me. I wanted a persona that had nothing to do with any of that. And I just wasn't true to myself. And I'm writing and raging, and I'm calling my father names because he never said he loved me. He never played cricket with me, for God's sake. My father was not an athlete. He didn't know what end of the bat to hold. He came from a generation where love was, do you have clothes on your back, roof over your head, you went to school, do you have a square meal in your belly? That was his way of showing love. What are my values? I went to Catholic school. Loyalty, honesty, fidelity. I had not lived up to any of those values. I could talk about them. But my sponsor changed it. He said, no, we're going to make you a man of action. What do you value and how do you show it? Ooh. Do you value your children? How? Do you value your business? How? Do you value your friendships? How? What traits of character do you wish to keep? What traits of... And 2 days later, I felt the voice of Darth Vader say, welcome to the dark side. Because every dark thing about me I had kept hidden came forth. I heard an AA guy put it beautifully. He said, all these years, I stood with my feet firmly planted in midair. And for the first time, I heard the thud, and I could look in the mirror and not preen, but truly like the person I was looking at, because now I had accepted the darkness that was about me and became a full individual. 1997 is when the program finally kicked in. And I haven't looked back. It's been a long trip from them. I'm going to tell you, it's been smooth sailing in one long night, incline, like hypotenuse and an angle there. It's been a trip, working that fourth step, just going deep into that darkness. I read a book by a Catholic priest who talks about how we are told what to do. We go to temple or church and they tell us what God to believe in. They tell us, what careers we have to. Parents tell us what do we need to do. We don't ever wait to find out what we truly want. It says not until age 30 do you really start to have this inkling. And at age 18, you're already making a decision what career you're going to follow, and you have no clue. And I said, what? He says in Paris, there's a church that actually has a maze. You have to go into the maze. And this is where step 3 became so important to me. Step 1, my sponsor said, is identify the problem. Step 2 is what are your options. See, because most of my epiphanies come in the shower. And if you read a book on neurology, they tell you that's when you're least focused on something, that's when you have your epiphany. So I'm standing in the shower with a white tile in front of me, the shower in my back, there's a black ant sitting on the dead, stuck to the tile. And I'm starting to think, what kind of protein would cause it to adhere like that? Throwing water at it, and all of a sudden the ant is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and the tile is getting smaller. And it hit me, oh my God, I focus on problems till they assume these enormous proportions, and I don't look at the solution. Because I'm not getting into that realm of thinking, just going from problem to what are my options. Step 3 was it was a horrible step for me in the beginning, because it had a thing called understanding God. Turning my will in my life. Today I know it's not a statement of surrender. It's a statement of intention. As someone pointed out in the meeting last night. It was a great meeting, by the way. I thoroughly enjoyed the meeting last night. The sharing was wonderful. I remember the gentleman who said, he almost quoted from the Gita, which says, anger is the wind that drives all reason away. And the Gita says, passion is that clouds all reason. And that the anger that comes out, the resentments that happen, that cloud out all reason when I cannot see clearly. There was a wonderful meeting last night. But that's third step was a struggle for me, and it says, turn my will. Someone said it's turning your thinking, which is your actions, and your life is your actions and your intention. Will in my life. Will is thinking and life is actions. But I got stuck on this understanding bit because I don't understand God. Because if I understand God, I'll manipulate God. And God cannot be manipulated. God has to be so vast beyond my understanding. So I visualize it not so much as surrender in the form of white flags and all that. For me, what works for me is tapping into the source, where then there's complete erasure between my will and God's will. And I'm not sitting there saying it's a consistent thing for me, but when I feel tapped in, I'm okay with whatever the results are. And that's what the third step for me is, being totally unaffected by what happens, because I like the Zen saying, it says, it is thus. Now that I know it is thus, what do I do with it? And whatever happens, happens. And that's been the peaceful transition for me on step 3. Step 4 especially brought me firmly planted on ground, if you will. Step 5 broke through the masks of image management, where I could actually sit across another man and open my heart to him. Today I miss my sponsor. I have a wonderful sponsor now, but the sponsor that had been with me for 25 years, he died 2 years ago. But this man was more like a father figure to me, a father that I did not have growing up, because my father traveled a lot, and my father and I did not have the kind of conversations that Dean and I did. And may Dean be up there having an Al-Anon meeting, because he really was a very grounded spiritual man. Steps 6 and 7 today are the underpinnings of my program, because in step 6 I know that it doesn't matter if I have to be entirely ready, if I'm willing to let go. For me, that's a step of willingness. And step 7, my men's meditation book has a $10 statement that says, one cannot move oneself off the center of one's endeavor. I cannot by myself push my traits of character out. I have to invite this grace to help me through it. Step 8 has been fantastic, because I read in a book called How to Be an Adult that my divorce therapist suggested. So guilt, there are two kinds of guilt. One is neurotic guilt, which most of us in Al-Anon suffer from. We're sorry for being sorry. And then there's real guilt. And he said real guilt requires restitution. And I like that because step 9 gives me that room to make living amends. It's been a fantastic journey. And as I pointed out, I met Vicky in Al-Anon. And in the last 5 years that we've been together, I really discovered a lot about me. The insecurities came up, the envies and the jealousies and all that stuff that I thought I'd worked through. But when you're not involved in a relationship, you're detached. There's no reason for detachment. You don't have a reason to be detached. So it's been a new growth for me in this program to be involved with someone who can pull my covers with such ease. Thank you. Anyway, I'm coming to the end of my talk here. I love my program, and I love what I get from the AAs. I get to attend these conferences and listen to wonderful speakers that I hear. Steve's going to be talking on Sunday, and Paul tomorrow, and Christine after me. And I have nothing but gratitude for the alcoholics and gratitude for the people in Al-Anon that have walked the path ahead of me. And I'm truly, truly blessed that I have found this journey, and I hope I keep walking it. And I'll finish with this. I hear some of my folks in Al-Anon say, you know what, I don't work the steps, I get it from osmosis. I come to meetings and I get it by osmosis. For me, wouldn't work. I can stand in a garage with a Ferrari sitting next to me. I will not become a Ferrari if I stand there for 20 years. You'll have to put a transmission down my nose and a thing up my ass to make me wear and paint me red maybe, and maybe I'll have a semblance to a car. I know I have to work the steps. And I came across this parable that said, you're at a fantastic feast, and you see all these people having a grand old time. They're eating, laughing, chatting, and you're sitting there at your place. See waiters and waitresses bustling by. No one's waiting on you. 10 minutes go by, 15 minutes go by, 30 minutes go by. Now you're fuming and you're resentful that no one's waiting for you. And then you come to the awareness that you're at a buffet. So this program requires me to get on my butt, go to a meeting or two. I don't believe in the Gestapo approach that you have to have so many meetings, because my addictions can switch from obsessing with people to obsessing over meetings. My sponsor tells me meetings are the huddle. I still got to go out and play the game. The rubber meets the road outside of the meetings. I can sound pious and holy and well recovered in a meeting because I can talk the talk. The language is so seductive in our program. I can spout the slogans and sound like I know what the heck I'm talking about. I can narrate other people's experiences and make them sound like they were mine. But I have to go through the darkness of the 4th step to come into the light of step 12 and trudge that road, as they say, to happy destiny. I'm truly grateful that you asked me to come out, and now you may applaud. Thank you.